So there's two types of people in this world right now. There are people who are familiar with me, and there's people who are not familiar with me. And real quick, for those of you who are not familiar with me, my name is StormPow and I make videos here on YouTube, hoping to expand your knowledge on content creation, live streaming, and pretty much everything else related to all that. And I have a very long history with podcasting. Now, those of you who are familiar with me probably know some of this podcasting history. It actually goes way, way back to the early 2010s when myself and Omega Pro and ZZ Toasty hosted what is known as the Derp Circle podcast. The podcast was a lot of fun. It was just three dudes talking about whatever topics were going on, like in gaming or technology or in pop culture.
Would you rather rub your ball sack and your dude obviously on a bear trap or get a blowjob from Baby Shark?
How sharp are the teeth exactly? Like, and is it teething right now?
Yeah. I would do the bear trap just because.
I was on an episode of Dragon Ball with Alejandro Saab.
We haven't talked to you in like, holy shit, 2-3 years?
He hasn't talked to you in 2 or 3
well,
years.
no,
Hello?
me and Darren.
You two have a relationship.
Well,
nigga,
no. F you. With Darren, I haven't talked to him or messaged him on Facebook since like last year, earlier this year. I'm special. F you.
I removed Toasty from Facebook.
I've been on a couple episodes of The Secret podcast.
You know, is that really where you're at? Like, that's what I was asking people, and most people were like, come out, you know.
Hey,
like,
yo, Lucifer, what's good? You got any more room in that melting pot?
And I recently even hosted my own podcast, StormPod, where I interviewed other content creators. I did go to middle school. I know these things.
I didn't.
So now that some of you guys that weren't familiar with me are now familiar with me, let's go ahead and jump into the video. In this video, you are gonna not know anything about podcasting maybe right now, but by the end of it, I want you to know everything that you need to know to get started on a podcast. And of course, if you are enjoying this video and you'd like to see more, I would really appreciate it if you gave this video a thumbs up or a comment, maybe even considered subscribing. We're currently on our way to 1,000 subscribers, and I'd really appreciate any help that we could get to that milestone. I do also stream on twitch.tv/thestormpow, and of course, a link for that will be down in the description below. But anyway, guys, that's enough plugs. Let's go ahead and jump into this. You're gonna need to choose a host. And for those of you who know nothing about podcasting and you don't really know what I mean when I say a host, basically a podcast is really just an RSS feed, which is a little file that you send to iTunes and to Spotify and Google Podcasts and stuff like that, that lets them get all of your new episodes. What a host is it's stuff like SoundCloud and Anchor or Podbean, where you go and you upload all of your new episodes, and then that host stores the data on there and they send it out to all of those platforms such as Spotify, Apple Music, Google Podcasts. I recently found out Pandora and iHeartRadio also have podcasting platforms, so there's that. Anchor, I recommend for the beginners of the beginners. And by that, I mean, you don't really even have like software on your computer. You don't really have a good microphone. You literally just want to record yourself talking, maybe, you know, do some little tweaks on it on your phone even, and throw that thing online, because Anchor definitely targets the audience of people who don't know a whole lot about technology and just want to put a podcast out there. And if that's you, then I say go for it. They definitely seem to have the simplicity down. You don't really need to have any kind of cool editing software or really any editing software at all. And like I said, you can literally record it on your phone and do everything right there on your phone. So it's definitely the most accessible. Now, there are a couple of people that I've heard that are a little iffy on some of their terms and services. A lot of people have basically made claims that they have a little bit more ownership over your content when you use Anchor. And again, I'm not saying this is fact. This is just what I've heard. So be leery of it when you're putting your stuff out there, that when you use Anchor, supposedly they may have a little bit more control over your content or a little bit more ownership. So if you think there's a chance that your podcast might blow up, obviously you want to have as much control and ownership over that as possible. But if you're just kind of doing this as something casual to kind of dip your toes in the water and get into podcasting and see if you like it and see what works, then I'd say it's definitely a pretty easy, low commitment way to get in. There's also SoundCloud, which I know a lot of people use, and SoundCloud's main draw to me is more so that it is a little bit more browsable. Nobody really just goes on like Podbean, for example, and is just looking for new podcasts really, whereas SoundCloud has people going on there because there's other stuff on the platform. There's also music, music and everything like that that people can go to SoundCloud for, and while they're looking at that, they may be introduced to your podcast. One of my only drawbacks with SoundCloud was I remember when I was looking at their pricing and plans, they didn't quite have a plan that suited my needs, and so that's why I ended up going with Podbean, mostly because it was pretty affordable, the plan covered everything that I needed, and it was definitely the most accessible to me. So the main factors that you'll want to consider when you're choosing your host are going to be how much you can store, and the main thing is that they will either sort it by hours of audio uploaded per month, or they'll sort it by bandwidth. So for example, if you're planning on uploading this podcast every week and each episode is going to be an hour long, you need to make sure that you can upload at least 4 hours of content every month. And it's always good to have a little bit of extra buffer in case an episode runs a little over, or you decide to throw in a bonus episode or things like that. I would much rather have an infinite amount of time that I can upload, but be limited on the actual bandwidth that's being used. So I'm not gonna go too much into the exact plans that all of these guys are currently running because they change them all the time. So instead, there will be links down in the description below where you can go and click on the pricing plans for all three of these and kind of compare and see which one might work best for you right now. The next thing that you need to know about how to make a podcast right now is how to get your podcast everywhere. And like I said, there are tons and tons of podcasting platforms, and the more of those that you can get your stuff on, then the more likely it is to be discovered by somebody. This will be a pretty quick section actually, because each one of those hosts that I mentioned is a little bit different, but the main thing that you need to know is you need to be able to get an RSS feed, and then you need to go and make an account on all of those different podcasting platforms. So once you've created your account with Podbean or SoundCloud or Anchor, you're going to go into your account and find your RSS feed, and then you have to go and make an account with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and things like that, and go ahead and then upload your RSS feed to their website. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. That part kind of sucks. It's very tedious, it's very time consuming, but the great thing about it is you only have to do it once. So maybe set aside a couple of hours one day to go in and create all those accounts and set up those RSS feeds there. But once you're done with that, you are done, and you'll really hardly ever have to touch those accounts. After that, you upload your new episode, and then the host is what distributes it to all those different platforms because your RSS feed will update. So the main thing is that Google is your friend. Once you've decided which one of your hosts you want to use, then I would recommend just Googling how to get your Podbean podcast on Google Podcasts, or how to get your SoundCloud podcast on Apple Podcasts. There are tons of tutorials and tons of YouTube videos, and a lot of times they are directly on your podcast host's website, and so they're going to be very up to date. They're going to be very good most of the time. But again, it's not something that I'm going to go super into detail on this video, just because that process can change pretty frequently. So I don't want this video to be outdated tomorrow. And let's move on to the final part. Once you've decided your host and you've got your account set up and you're ready to distribute your podcast, let's go ahead and see how to actually make your dream come a reality. There are a couple of tools that I'm going to recommend as far as recording your podcast and getting everything pieced together and getting it into a good format to send out to your podcast host and to let the masses listen to it. Obviously, there's Audacity. That is by far the most popular free audio recording program, and I've used it for years, and I know many others have. It's very simple to use, very free. You download it and you can record your audio, and you can even do some basic editing, like you can do noise reduction if your microphone has a little bit of static. You can clip it, edit it, and cut certain pieces out that you want to get out of there. Personally, what I've always used to edit podcasts when I want to add a whole lot of different stuff, like for example, if maybe it's an interview and I need to sync my audio up with the guest, and maybe we want to even add some background music at parts or like ad breaks and things like that, I always love using a video editing program just because traditionally they're a little bit easier to use for me as far as blending a whole bunch of different layers together. And a great free video editing program is DaVinci Resolve. So if you're like me and maybe you think that your brain will work a little bit better with a video editing program, go check out DaVinci Resolve. They've got a free version that is really great, like by far the best free video editing program that I've ever seen. And so I recommend going in there and maybe piecing everything together. And of course, you don't have to export it as a video. You can export it as a WAV audio or an MP3 audio or whatever format that your host prefers. I just always recommend keeping static to very low. So take the 2 minutes and do some noise removal on your microphone if you need to. Maybe even add a little bit of intro music. There's of course some really great resources for royalty-free music. I'll have a couple linked down below as well, because you don't want to go around and getting DMCA strikes or anything like that on your podcast, obviously. So once you've pieced everything together, you've added a little bit of music maybe at the beginning, you've edited out some of the static, and you've made it sound nice and pretty, and it is now ready for the consumption of your ears, go into your podcast host, upload that bad boy, and boom, there you go. You now know how to make a podcast. And I hope that this video has helped you. If it was, please be sure to subscribe, give this video a thumbs up, and let me know in the comments down below what other questions you guys have about podcasting or content creation. I'd love to chat with you down there as well, or maybe even make a follow-up video. So anyway, guys, also be sure to follow me on Twitter, Instagram, all that good stuff, and join the Discord server where we've got a lot of other people talking about gaming and music and anime, freaking movies, all that good stuff. Everybody's awesome there. And also be sure to go to my kit.com profile down below if you're also looking for some like gear recommendations and things like that. I always keep a low budget but high quality streaming and content creation setup list over there. So be sure to check that out and find yourself some good gear that won't cost you a lot of money. But anyway, guys, that is it for this video. I would like to thank you all for watching. I hope you have a nice day, and goodbye.